Disruptors, we got a special episode with Dr. Kate Lund, and everybody's life is busy. Professionals, entrepreneurs, just trying to balance every aspect of our lives between kids, going to school, raising the kids, bringing them to school, going to work, keeping your business running, and then coming back and adjusting to life. And that's what we're going to talk about with Dr. Kate Lund today. I want to welcome you to the show. You're coming from Seattle, Washington. Glad to have you.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is great.
And you've got a great background. We can touch a little bit on your early background in a moment, from your time with the White House, which is fascinating to me. But before we get into that, what describe what you do, your practice.
Sure. So I'm a clinical psychologist
Hmm.
and an author,
Hmm.
and that's what I've been focusing on for the past 22 years.
Okay.
And it's been great. It's been a great journey.
So you as your own practice, you are an entrepreneur in and of yourself. And a lot of people are solopreneurs or have small practices. My dad was a dentist, he had his practice. What was would you say this is always the fascinating part for me is people whenever they're starting out, there's always the challenges of getting going. What was the biggest challenge you had getting because you made a career transition, and we'll talk
Yes.
about why, but you started this practice. What was the biggest challenge you had getting it going?
Right. That's a great question. And certainly there were challenges. And so the transition came a little bit before the challenges, but we can touch on that later if you'd like. The challenge for me getting started, to be honest, so I was in Boston. I
Mhm.
did all my training in Boston, really, really fortunate, had some great opportunities with Harvard Medical School and the hospitals affiliated with them, and it was just awesome. And I loved it. And then my husband got transferred
Mm.
away from Boston. And so there was kind of a, how's this going to evolve type of question. And so that was the first challenge of really getting going because I would have stayed in Boston for quite a while longer, right? So that was the first thing. But it all evened out. I moved to Connecticut with him. I did my postdoctoral training at the University of Hartford and thought that I was on the runway, right, to get going. Um, and then we were really, really blessed. We were fortunate. Our twin boys were born right after I finished my postdoc at the University of Hartford. And there again, I was on the runway, a little time off. It was going to be great. And then my husband got transferred again.
Mm.
And so there was that piece of how's this going to work. And, looking back, it all worked out fine. And in those times, it was working out okay. But there was always that pull like, wait, I want to really establish my career. I want to establish as a professional, my professional identity, all of that. But, there was flexibility, there was pivoting involved, and, it was just perhaps not the direction I had envisioned up front, but
Yep.
you know what? Things have evolved in a really cool way over time, and we moved about 5 or 6 more times within that,
Wow.
right after that. So, I think that in a nutshell, this is a long way of saying my biggest challenge was all of my husband's job transitions and moves and how my career development fit into that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
That's a journey in itself, trying to figure that out. And it's never a straight line.
right. I mean, right. It's never a straight line. I mean, that goes without saying. I just feel like there were maybe a few more squiggles in the midst here because you know, kind of establishing that professional identity was and is still continues to be really important to me.
Yeah.
And just a lot of pivoting and flexibility involved. And as I look back, a lot of great times too. I mean, I was basically single parenting my first
Mhm.
3 years as a mom because Ted was on the road 6 days a week. And the boys and I had a great time. It was exhausting, it was stressful. It probably was the catalyst for my focus on resilient parenting,
Yep.
but, it all comes full circle eventually, and we can connect the dots.
And that's what we'll delve into is the resilient parenting piece. Now, and I wanted you to share that piece because that kind of shares, you know, uh, definitely laid the groundwork for what you do today.
Great.
Um, but in that process, you didn't start there. And I want to first ask you before we go back to the White House piece. I want to bring that up. But who or what what influenced you? Who or what are you grateful for today, to get you where you are right now?
Right, to get me to where I am right now, I'll go way back to my childhood, it really grateful for my parents, grateful
Mhm,
for their support, helping me through some challenges as a child. I had a medical condition that had to be
mhm,
dealt with early on, and, that really dealing with that and the way that they dealt with it and helped me to deal with it really was a catalyst for the direction that I was able to go, so their support was pivotal. And now, I'm grateful for my husband, I'm grateful for my boys,
yeah.
really as my foundation for enabling all of this to have happened in the way that it's developed.
Well, and I appreciate that for sure. I think that's the case for a lot of people. It's their family that roots them, drives them to do what they do. But your career didn't start out that way. Your career literally started as an intern at the White House, which we've talked about prior. Um, and you were in the media section, helping communications and so forth. Why the shift?
Yeah, that's a great question, Yule. And I had a concentration in journalism along with my psychology major in college. And I had this really great opportunity to do an exchange program with American University when I was a senior in college. And as part of that, we had to apply for internships in Washington, D.C. And I was really fortunate to get one at the White House
That's amazing.
early on in the Clinton administration. And super cool experience. I absolutely loved it. And while I was kind of sure that I was going to go back to graduate school at some point, I knew that when I graduated from college, I wasn't going to go right to graduate school. And so this experience in Washington was so cool. I loved it. I loved being at the White House. I loved the opportunities it afforded me. And I knew I wanted to live in DC at least for a while. And so that is what I did. But I also learned while at the White House, on the White House lawn at 4 in the morning, helping set up chairs for the media or an event that was coming up. Broadcast wasn't probably going to be the right
Mm,
area for me. A little bit too intense, a little bit too much kind of hair, makeup early in the, it was a bit.
mhm.
And so I knew there had to be another angle. So when I moved back to Washington, I got into marketing and public relations for some of for PBS, the Learning Channel, Discovery, that sort of thing through an agency. It was a great, great experience, but there was always this underlying pull.
Mm,
Like, I love what I'm doing, but and so ultimately, after Ted and I got married, we moved to Boston, did the PR and marketing thing for another year with some brands, other brands,
mhm.
Ronzoni Pasta, Chase Corporate Challenge, which was really fun, by the way, because
Yeah.
I got to travel around the country with spokespeople for the Chase Corporate Challenge.
Mhm.
And it was super fun. They were runners. They were
Yeah.
really, really cool people. But there was still that pull, and,
Right.
there was a point in time where we were setting up for an event, and some of my colleagues got in a fight in a grocery store about the position of the pasta box on the shelf,
Mm.
and I couldn't quite get there. So, it was at that point that I decided, "Okay, I'm gonna apply to graduate school, and I'm gonna move in this direction of becoming a psychologist, and the rest is history."
Wow, you and I share that degree. But I didn't have the direction. I defaulted to a psychology degree at LSU, uh, as I was supposed to be pre-med, and I knew that wasn't gonna happen real quick. I figured that out. And then my psychology degree didn't prepare me for much at the time. Later in life, it's come in very helpful, but coming out straight out of college is not knowing what you wanna do, it's just kinda left me wondering. But what you talked about was good because so many people do something they don't enjoy or they have the but they don't do anything about the but. They just keep going through it and realize 20 years later, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I've just spent 20 years doing something I'm not sure if that was useful or helpful to my life, to the fulfillment part of my life."
Right. And that's such a great point, right? That's such a great point. And yeah, sometimes those 20 years do go by and it's a hard thing. And so finding that why, that thing
Yeah,
early is really, really helpful.
it's
But,
helpful.
yeah, really,
It's
really
never
helpful.
too late. It's never
That
too
that
late.
that's
It's
so
never
funny. I was
too late to turn
about
it
to say
around
that.
and
Mhm.
pursue that scratch that itch, I say, figure out what it is that you've always wanted to do. Maybe it's time to do that. Now, let's shift gears one more time because I just found your background really cool because we shared some commonalities there, talking about other people we knew.
Yes.
Um, but today, your role, the problem that you solve is you help parents who are very busy with their lives and their businesses and their work balance all this so that they're resilient. And I think there's more distractions now. I can't imagine, I'm not a parent, but I look at my parents, what they went through with me, and then I look at the parents, what they go through today with kids with these things right here,
Ooh,
cell phones and everything else. I just cannot imagine the demands, the concerns, all the things that happen. And that's how you coach and help people with your practice. Let's unpack that and how do you help people in that area?
sure. Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you for that question. It's complex. I mean, there's no one size fits all, right? But we
Mhm.
always have sort of a go-to, a structure that we work from, and then we tailor according to, each client's specific needs. But the first thing that I work with people on, that I teach them the value of, is this idea of managing your stress response. So, what that means is essentially quieting your central nervous system.
Okay.
And that is really essential and serves as a powerful foundation for everything that comes next, right? Because if we're kind of going through life escalated already at like this point, and then a challenge hits, boom, we're going to escalate to the point of literal
Mhm.
shutdown. And then we're not going to be able to function in our own right. We're not going to be able to be there fully for our kids, the whole thing. So, finding a way to quiet our central nervous systems for all of us, and this actually applies like across domains, beyond just parenting, of
Mhm.
course, is essential. And so, I work with a technique developed by this physician in Boston. He's sadly no longer alive, but Herbert Benson, and the relaxation response. Essentially, it's so simple. We just have folks focus on a word or a phrase that they find soothing and breathe.
Mhm.
Get into a rhythm, a habit of doing this 5 to 10 minutes in the morning, 5 to 10 minutes in the evening, serving as placeholders on each side of the day. After time, that really serves to create a modulated stress response so that your baseline is down here, so that when a stressor hits, you can sort of roll with it, ebb and flow with it. So that's the first thing. Really, really key. Other
Right.
ways of doing this, of course, and we can talk through them with the clients, but that's really the go-to for me. Um, and then, helping folks to prioritize self-care beyond that.
Mhm.
Um, we want them to cultivate a sense of self-awareness um, within that. What do they need to be caring for themselves fully? Um, so those are the first couple things that we
Mhm.
really focus on at the beginning of our work.
Mhm.
And then there's this idea of, the importance of having a strong support network around us. We think about that in relation to each person's unique experience. We want them to be appreciating their own unique context, not comparing themselves to what other people might need,
Mhm.
but creating a strong network which fits their context and which works for them. Because we know, and all the research states, that having that level of social support is going to help us to move through and beyond challenge when it comes up.
And you're talking about that from a personal side and a business side? Because I see it, I can certainly see it from a business side, right? You're trying to accomplish whatever it is, X, you're gonna surround yourself with people who know how to do X. But you talk about from a parenting side too, how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So both sides, if the parent is a business owner, an entrepreneur, and corporate, whatever, we want to have that business side covered. But
Mhm.
yeah, we're talking largely from a personal side,
Yeah.
joining like a book club or making sure that you're connecting with old friends at least a couple times a month.
Mm.
Maybe setting up a dinner with other moms or other dads, or going out with another couple in the evening, for dinner on a Saturday night, even though you're tired and you're feeling run down from the chaotic weekend with the kids or everything else you've got going on. Carving out that time to connect with other people in real time is really vital because, as you know, as we've talked about, we've got this cell phone situation going on, right? And we can feel like we're connected, but we're really not connected. And to have that
Yeah.
real time support is very, very powerful. And I work with people on sort of reflecting back on the times in the year or the week or the month or whatever in their life where they haven't had that level. And then
Mm.
going out and having a lunch or a dinner or going to a book club or connecting with like-minded people around a hobby or an art class, or there's so many different possibilities for doing this. No one
Yeah.
size fits all, but so important to do.
That's so easy. I mean, I can look at my wife and I, right? I mean, she's does a lot of events in my career at the point where I was doing lots of events. The last thing we wanted to do on a weekend, if we didn't have an event, was to go to an event or go to dinner with other people. We just wanted to chill. But there comes a point where you have to do that. You have to connect with others. That's not just about business, you know?
Exactly, exactly. And so and going to the events that you're talking about, you're definitely connecting. So you're in a better space than if you were sitting home that whole
Yeah.
week and not connecting at all. But yeah, connecting on that other level can be very powerful within the context of what's working for you. Like if you're
Right.
really, really exhausted from a week of work or a week of events.
Sometimes you need to break too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not advocating for like
Yeah.
being out all the time. This is
Yep.
just particularly if you're, if you're on the other side of that coin, so to speak.
I've
Um,
been on the other side of the coin. I was like, there's just times where I just wanna just be, you just did so much of it, but you gotta find
Absolutely.
balance.
And again, right, it's finding the balance that works best for you. And, it can be quick snippets of connecting. But
Mhm.
that's really important. And then, helping folks to embrace this idea of flexibility, optimism,
Mhm.
gratitude,
Mhm.
really important because as parents, as people, across domains, we can really get micro focused on the challenges. And don't get me
Mhm.
wrong, the challenges need to be managed. They need to
Mhm.
be moved through and beyond. But we also need to really take time, concerted focus to focus on the things that are going well and not just the challenges. And so I work with folks on setting aside a time during the day, maybe at lunch, maybe in the evening, maybe in the morning, of
Mhm.
jotting down 3 to 5 things that went well, either the day
Mhm.
before or on a
Gratitude.
day. And, kind of fosters gratitude, fosters a sense of optimism, kind of helps folks to see what has gone well and
Mhm.
move beyond. And so neutralize that lens because, human nature can focus us on the negative really fast and really easy,
Yep.
especially given, everything we're hearing out there in the world. So
Mm.
that's a really important practice.
Wow. Anything else you wanna hit on? Wow, 'cause these are great. 'Cause I mean, the the prioritizing self-care thing is also really important. It's so easy for us. I'm kinda going back a step here. That one is interesting to me because it's so easy just to get complacent.
Mhm.
I mean, both for the physical, mental, and the spiritual piece, all those pieces, so we can focus. It's so easy to get lost in the work
Yep.
and let that medicate other areas of our lives to the point it's detrimental to our other parts of our lives,
So
you know?
so true. So true. And it's really being intentional about carving out that time for
Yeah,
that self-care and creating a routine, a rhythm that works for you. And again, there's
yes,
no one size fits all, right? But
yeah,
it's
and
important to
and
figure that out.
and I think it's really fascinating 'cause the way you opened it was talking about setting the baseline of stress lower because it's so easy to start the day amped up over being waking up stressed about something.
Mhm.
Then the smallest thing is gonna become a big issue when it's really not even a big issue.
Yeah.
So you help people unpack these in detail through in-depth conversations, um, and walk them through this process.
Mhm.
What happens next after after you've coached people through these steps? Because I mean, these all make sense, you know, setting the baseline for the stress, prioritizing the self-care. Okay, yeah, you're out of tilt here. Let's look at this area. Building that network and a community of friends or others of common interest, focusing on the right things, so as you touched on. How do you cultivate this and nurture this going forward with others?
Yeah, and so that's a really good question, right? And that's a really important piece because we want all of these things to be integrated over time so that folks are kind of operating from this place of a resilient mindset. We're
Mhm,
not looking at resilience as just moving through like a singular challenge. It's
mhm,
more of having this resilient mindset plugged
mhm,
in so that that's where we're operating from. And it takes time and it takes practice. And so, we might encourage folks to journal, to
mhm,
really think
mm,
through, the shifts, the changes that they're making. We encourage folks to be flexible in
mm.
making these shifts because it takes time to form
Yeah.
new directions, new habits, that sort of thing. So, and
It's
we,
very intentional too.
yes, very, very
That's
intentional.
I think that's what the key is here is you really help people. It's so obvious when somebody else points it out to you. But
Yes.
when you're in the middle of it, and if your life is kind of turmoil and your work is turmoil and you're trying
Mhm.
to make sense out of it, it's hard to make sense for anybody while they're in the storm. They cannot see everything that's swirling around them. That's what you help. You can see it from the outside in and start asking them questions, drawing out information, and providing giving them a sense, a pathway to clarity, so they can see where they should, how they can start turning things around and make it better to find that balance and find that resiliency, so they can continue to move forward. Am I kind of
Exactly.
summarizing that all right?
That is perfect. That's spot on. And then, really encouraging folks to understand that small changes, you
Mhm.
know, have a big impact. And
Yeah.
you don't have to go from A to Z all at once. It's those small changes, consistency in making those shifts and helping them to see that and appreciate that so that they're not beating themselves up for the process taking time because that's the reality. It takes time.
Yeah, I think everybody needs that kind of coaching. I mean, there's a reason why a basketball player has a coach. They never get better. They never get better if they don't have coaching. That's same thing for life, same thing for business. It applies for everything, and you help bring that level of clarity. How to before I go to how people can find you, because I think this is a great place to land this.
Yeah.
Um, if you were to do things over, what would you have done differently? Maybe that's a question I haven't asked in a while. What would you do differently, and how would you apply that to help others today?
Wow, that is such a great question. And I think about that. I reflect on that
Mhm.
quite frequently. And I honestly, I spent a long time, um, doing more traditional clinical work,
Mhm.
one-to-one, clinical work. And while I loved that, uh, I would have started this angle on things earlier.
Mm.
I would
Mm.
have built this piece of my work out earlier than I did, is what
You can
I would
reach more people.
exactly, to reach more
Yeah.
people, help more people. Absolutely. I would, and I would not wait so long to start certain things like writing a book
Mm.
or, starting a podcast or these things. I wouldn't wait quite so long because I was worried about the technical aspects or would it work out or what
Yeah.
have you. I wouldn't have held myself back quite so long.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get stuck on the perfection part instead of and it prevents some perfectionism prevents progress, and
Yes.
they don't take any steps. They freeze up and they stay stuck.
Right.
So let's get some people unstuck if they're stuck that'll listen to this hopefully. And how can people reach out to you? How can they connect with you? What's the best way?
Sure. So my website is a great way, which is katelundspeaks.com. So
Mhm.
that's a great one. And LinkedIn is the other good one. I'm very active on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Well, I'll have your links on the landing page for your show. And Kate, Dr. Lund, I appreciate your time today. This has been fantastic. You and I speak the same language. Oh my gosh, I feel like I feel like we've known each other for 20 years. So I
I
really
know.
appreciate it.
Isn't that fun? Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Oh, thank you. All right. And that is a wrap with Dr. Kate Lund. And what she's alluding to is a lot of people they get lost in the busyness of their work. And sometimes they lose sight of what they're doing. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is not fulfilling because it's so bloody busy, or it's just the wrong thing. And that's where I hear that over and over as a franchise consultant. I wrote a book to address that called Your First Franchise Roadmap. I'd love to gift you a copy. Just visit yourfirstfranchise.com. I'll get you a copy of the book and you can learn more about the process of getting into your first franchise. Close the deal on your first franchise. And I want to thank you for being here. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, all those things because we're building a community. It does help and it's much appreciated. And you know the drill. Be intentional and make today. Let me go back to that word, be intentional. Everything she talked about was about being intentional. That process that she helps people with is about being intentional. So let me finish up what I was saying. Be intentional and make today a great day. Bye bye.